Welcome to the small video tutorial series from 4D Views. In this edition, I'm going to talk about how to set up a good lighting scene in Unity. For this tutorial, I have already prepared this little scene from our Unity temple scene demo. And I have already imported the Unity 4D Views plugin and set up the sequences in the scene. Let's first start with our sequence. At the moment, our sword fighters seem to be out of place. That is because the shader that they're assigned to is the legacy shader self-illumination vertex lit. I don't want a self-illuminating shader, so let's change this shader to the standard shader. Default setup is not very optimal for our meshes, so let's change our setup so that it looks better. I'm going to drag smoothness all the way to 0. I'm also going to deactivate emission since we won't need it. And I'm also going to disable specular highlights and reflections, since both of them can cause artifacts on our texture. As a last step, I'm also going to enable receive shadows. Now that our sequence is all set up, it is time to go towards lighting. The first thing I want to do in lighting is to get rid of all the elements I won't be using in this scene. This directional light is not needed, so let's delete it. In our lighting step, we have a skybox. I'm also not going to need a skybox since this is an indoor only scene, so let's delete it. In this small tutorial we will not bake light mats, so let's also disable real-time lighting and mixed lighting since we won't be using them. It is time to add a light source. For this simple video I'm going to use a spotlight. So let's go into hierarchy, create, lights, spotlight. I'm going to drag this spotlight right into the top of this couple. Right here. This looks good. The spotlight does not have enough range, so let's change that. In regarding to lights and ranges, even though the range might be high enough so that it will touch the sequence, the intensity of the spotlight also dissipates over range. In order to tackle this problem, I'm going to set the range to a very high number, like 120. As a result of that, I do not have to worry about dissipation of intensity over range. I'm also going to set the indirect multiplier to 0, and I'm also going to set the color to a little bit of a warmer yellow-orange-ish tone. Alright. I'm also going to enable soft shadows, so that we can have shadows on our ground. Now that the spotlight is in place, the characters still seem a little bit out of place because they're too dark in a valid environment. For that I'm going back to the lighting panel and adjust my ambient color. I'm also adjusting the ambient color to be warm as my spotlight. Like this. Now that everything is in place, I'm going to look at the results. I'm also going to see if I have put those meshes too close to the stone and they accidentally clip through the wall. So let's press play. There seems to be a little bit of clipping going on, so let's fix that by dragging our sequence a little bit more to the right. You can also see if your sequence is clipping through the wall by adjusting the preview frame. In this example, the sword, even though the characters are not clipping through these walls anymore, the sword is. So let's high them up a little bit. I don't want them to float, but I also don't want the sword to be stuck in the ground. This looks good. Now let's press play again.